Right, welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today we welcome back Diana Londoño. She's a urologist, and today's Kevin MD article is The Surprising Truth About Where Intimacy Really Begins. Diana, I know you came straight from the OR. I appreciate you coming here.
Kevin, thank you so much just for always your grace, your humility, your love, and everything you do. And I really just actually want to acknowledge just how grateful I always am of you and everything you are. And, I was reflecting this morning about, my first article, which was in, almost 3 years ago, July 2021, that I've submitted. And I just want to say that people sometimes have this thing like their time before COVID, their time before, JFK was assassinated. Like there's a time where they remember there's a big change in their life. And I have to honestly say, my reflection this morning, it really was my time before my KevinMD article
No.
and after. It really, really, really was a big path to my journey. And I've said that before to you, of healing and of growth. And I feel like from 3 years ago to now, it's such a different place. And I'm just so grateful to come back and sort of full circle in a different place. So I'm very grateful to you and everything you do. And I
Well,
really
thank
appreciate
you.
you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for saying those words. And I know you've come such a long way because I see you all over LinkedIn. You have a wonderful platform now. You do coaching. Tell me how all that's going.
Well, it's definitely been a growth journey. And I think, even this year, my word was expansion. And
Yeah.
I never had a word this any year, but I did do that this year. And it really, words are very powerful. They
Yeah.
manifest, they become what your reality. And it really has been a year of growth, stretching, being uncomfortable, breaking, falling, crying, laughing, dancing all at once. And this is sort of this article we'll talk about in a second. It's very personal, and all my
Mhm.
articles are personal, and all my posts are personal. It
Yeah.
really is my journal that I just share with the world, because that's how I heal. And my healing journey has been writing. And I encourage people to do that. Maybe they never have to, submit or share, but do it in their own comfort of their own home, their journal, their computer, because
Yeah.
it can really be so transformative to write. And that's really what this, whole journey has been about.
So I can't emphasize that enough. Writing, doing something that you say is uncomfortable, and just embracing that vulnerability. It's not only help you heal, but just giving you so many other opportunities as well outside of clinical medicine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it really is something you look forward to, and it helps others. I mean, I really, I share it. People call it vulnerable that I share things that I do, but it really gives other people the courage to maybe get a little uncomfortable themselves, try
Yeah.
something new, and to realize like you're not alone. Like we all have the same struggles with shame or imposter syndrome, or, crying or being angry. And like that's okay. Like they're emotions, and we are human, and we have to embrace our humanity, and our humanity is filled with emotions, and robots don't have that. So that,
Yeah.
and rocks don't have that, but we do. And it's a gift. But in medicine, it's sort of been like, well, you shouldn't have those. And those are dirty words, and you don't have those emotions, And so it's really about giving people that permission to have their humanity back and
Mhm.
embrace it, and just go along with the ride, and just like ride that wave of like roller coaster of emotions. And it's okay.
So you mentioned we're going to talk about one of your latest articles today, The Surprising Truth About Where Intimacy Really Begins. Now, tell us how this article came together, and then talk about the article itself for those who didn't get a chance to read it.
Yeah, well, also first, thank you for the title. It's beautiful. You changed it, and it really hit the point. And that picture was absolutely outstanding. I mean, it really, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But yeah, that's also personal. It's been a personal journey of, my own growth, of course. But, I've been married almost, 17 years. And marriage is, challenging, and it doesn't come with a manual. And it's not just the wedding that is the goal, it's the
Mhm.
whole lot of work.
Yeah.
And, especially for me, when you have children, it's a lot of strain. There's a lot of energy being put in different places. And if you don't really spend that time to nurture that relationship, and sort of like you water the grass and the plants, if you don't do that, then disconnection is going to happen. There's going to be a lot of things that, change, and, it may not be great, but it's really important to sit with that discomfort. Think about, intimacy. And this article talks about intimacy. And I'm not talking about just having sex in the bedroom. That's what people think about. intimacy starts outside the bedroom,
Mhm.
100%. And is that connection with the other person, and is that vulnerability we sort of talked about earlier. It's a connection of the mind, of the thoughts. It's a connection of, the voice speaking to each other. It's a connection of the heart, of opening the heart, of being vulnerable and asking for forgiveness, asking for what you need. I mean, there's so many things that are so important. And then, of course, yes, that other connection is going to be sort of like your sexual organs, your intimacy that gets aroused. Everything gets activated when there is that intimacy.
Mm.
And I think that people, I heard somebody on a podcast. It was actually two male doctors talking about like you should schedule time, for physical sex, that intimacy sex part. And that's really important. And that's a good point. I understand where that's coming from. But even if you schedule that time for physical sexual act, if you don't schedule that time outside, and if you're not really doing that every day outside of the bedroom, that sexual union is gonna be okay, but it's gonna fall a little flat. It's just not really gonna be that blissful state that people think about. And even in Eastern philosophies and, Kundalini and that sexual union, I mean, sex can be very, triggering, and there's a lot of things about it. But at the core of it, if you have everything aligned with your partner, the mind, the thoughts, the voice, the connection, the heart, and yes, your Kundalini energy and all your sexual energy, I mean, it really is a blissful state, is what
Mhm.
people dream about, either whether you're in a meditation or, during sex and tantric, like with tantra, that union. So I think it's really important to understand that that all happens outside, and it's work, and it's vulnerability, and it's really love, because love energy is the key that's going to unlock all the other ones. Like if you don't have that heart open, like everything else is going to shut down. So it's really, really important to think about it that way. And also, and the other aspect of it too is, I'm a urologist and I deal with this all the time.
Yeah.
The balance of pleasure and pain. We see that all day, whether it's sexual or not. There's a lot of that. And we have a lot of drugs, testosterone and Addy for women for increasing your desire and your libido. I mean, you can give all the testosterone in the world, I mean, honestly, but if you don't have that connection, like that's kind of pointless. But in society, in Western and in all society, we want that easy fix. I want that shot. I want that pill.
Yeah.
That's gonna like give you the solution. But it actually takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that's really what this article was about.
So, what are some examples where couples can express that intimacy outside of the bedroom? So, you gave some general things of what we should do, but what would be a scenario? What would be some examples of what that would look like?
Yeah, I think it starts with, many things, but one of them can be just curiosity.
Hmm.
When there's a miscommunication, instead of getting defensive, because that's what we do, our ego gets flared, then we start getting attacking and we start getting triggered, and all our traumas probably just vomit on each other. We have to step back a little bit and get curious and let go of our
Hmm.
ego, which is hard, especially for surgeons, but for anybody, everybody's going to be flaring up with their ego.
Hmm.
And we gotta, sort of, come from the side of like, okay, I hear you. I see that's your viewpoint. Like, tell me more, get curious.
Hmm.
And when you get curious with the other person, you ask them more questions, that wall and that resistance and that fighting energy actually comes down. And that really can be whether it's a patient or it's your spouse or any relationship. When you ask, tell me more, it's an invitation to really connect. So I
Hmm.
think that could be a first step of what can you do outside the bedroom when communication may, not really connect. And, the men are from Mars and women are from Venus. I
Hmm.
mean, we sometimes speak different languages.
Hmm.
So we have to say, okay, well, I didn't really get what you said. Tell me more, And so I think that's a huge key when we're starting to feel defensive, when the communication just went flat.
Now, how did you come to that realization? Is this something that requires counseling?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, I think it's not an easy thing. It's
Yeah.
mindset. I mean, coaching, of course, coaching is about mindset. You have to think about basic one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
Your thoughts create a feeling, and that feeling is going to lead you to an action and a result. So if I felt attacked, then I'm going to feel angry, and then I'm going to start, yelling back or shutting down. That's going to
Yeah.
happen. That's not going to lead to intimacy. So in the bedroom, yeah, I'm sure you can schedule your sex time, but it's going to be like, me. I'm not really into it, but yes, I'm just here for the motions, and also there's a whole part of it, which, is a huge thing. Like, what are women and even men, but like, especially Latin and many
Mhm.
cultures, we're just there to please the man. And it's our duty to have sex like this many times a week or an hour, however much they want to say. And we have to sort of be like, if you don't feel it, if you don't have that connection, then it's actually okay for you to stand up and say, I'm not gonna have the physical act of sex because I don't have that connection outside and I don't want to do it here.
Yeah.
Because that's actually inauthentic to have sex, have that physical transfer of energy if you don't have that connection. So it's about authenticity in and outside the bedroom. And it's about vulnerability in and outside the bedroom of saying your needs and saying what you want and saying what's true to you.
Mhm. So, like you said earlier, couples these days, families these days, so overscheduled, especially
Mhm.
if you have kids. I have two teenage daughters, and certainly I can understand how difficult it is. But you said it does take, of course, a lot of work. So tell us the type of work that it would take to maintain that intimacy, that communication, despite how busy typical families are.
Yeah, I think when our society, which it is in fight or flight all the time because chronic stress is a real thing. It's about 90% of all doctor visits are stress related, 80 to 90% are truly in every specialty stress related. Burnout in all sectors, not just physicians, is the pandemic. So chronic stress leads to burnout, and we're all experiencing it. So what does that mean? That means we're running in fight or flight. We're
Hmm.
always just reactive. And, when you're reactive, when you're in fight or flight, you can't be curious. It's just not going to exist.
Yeah.
So how do you get out of the fight or flight? Well, you have to cultivate a practice, a time to have that silence, have that quiet, whether you call it prayer, whether you call it journaling, whether you call it meditation, whatever you call it, it has to be scheduled. If we're going to
Hmm.
talk about scheduling, we got to schedule that time for you. Because in that time, you're going to go from that fight or flight, sympathetic, to a parasympathetic that
Hmm.
is going to give you that space when somebody or your spouse says something triggering, that you can then have a pause between your thoughts and your reaction. So you have to do that. That is your work you have to do, so that every day, whether it's your spouse or your kids or challenging conversations in the operating room or wherever you're doing them,
Hmm.
you can have a space of not attacking, getting curious, and I can opening your heart, instead of closing and fighting. Fear is an energy, any emotion is an energy. Fear is very constricting. When you're scared, you like, you actually clinch down.
Yeah.
Love is expansive. Love is magnetic. So it's a different energy. Like, people feel it. You walk in the room, you feel somebody happy and joyful, and you feel that. I mean, you can't deny that even if you don't feel energy very well. So we have to switch to a place where you're in love, where you are calm. And, another way to something to do tactical or practical is really gratitude.
Hmm.
Gratitude is not just foofy loofy. It's not, whatever, something to also do. It's a state of being that changes your physiology. Actually, it changes your cells, it changes your energy. And the more you're grateful for, the more you find things to be grateful for. I mean, it's like multiplying effect.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, the lens of what you see is very different. So these are things you can do practically, like have that time scheduled, not
Hmm.
for, you know, intimacy and sex, but for you to be in a calm state. Schedule that time to, really just take care of you. And it is really, really important. If you don't do that, well, yeah, it's going to be chaos because we're also busy.
Hmm.
And the reality is we have so much time. I mean, people tell me, oh, you're so busy. How do you do it all? Because I schedule my time to really become be centered and have something in the morning that I'm going to focus, like, what's my center today? What do I want to like face the day with joy, with happiness, with peace, with calm? Like, what is my goal for today? And it's a mindset. I mean, it's a mantra. It's something that you're going to focus on. But if you just wake up and get out and roll out and just where's the coffee and run, well,
Hmm.
I think your day is going to be different. And again, you could try it out and see how it works, but you got to try it. You got to do the work. You got to get curious. Well, would that work for me? Would there be a change if I do something different? And I think there will be, but we have to do it.
We're talking to Diana Londoño. She's a urologist, and today's Kevin MD article is The Surprising Truth About Where Intimacy Really Begins. Diana, as always, will end with some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I want to just say, really, please, please realize you're worthy, realize your matter, realize that love is the biggest, most important energy in the universe. It really, it's not corny, but it can change everything. If we change from love, instead of being in fear and division and
Mhm.
hate, like what would the world look like? What would medicine look like when we're compassionate and loving, not just to patients, but to each other, how we speak to each other? So love, practice it, love, feel it. We are love. We just got to get rid of all this other junk that's on top of us and realize it's within us and we are love.
Diana, thank you again for sharing your perspective and insight. And thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Kevin. As always, I'm so humble and so grateful. Thank you.